Alrighty then. Welcome everybody. Lisa Ann Edwards is an award-winning leadership coach and the founder of and CEO of My Excelia. I hope I said that right. The first and only automated system that helps coaches, consultants, and leadership experts prove their real financial ROI so they can make it easy for clients to invest with them. That's what we're here for today. As a former head of talent management for a Bill Gates-owned global media company, Lisa learned firsthand the importance of effective people development programs when senior executives cut all the programs because they couldn't see bottom line results. I think we've all been there before. I know I have. Lisa brought budgets. Lisa brought budgets back to the organization after proving the ROI of a coaching program. Since then, Lisa has worked on ROI projects with some of the most recognizable brands in the world: Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Gates Foundation, Pinterest, Gusto. Oh, I get paid through Gusto. The Federal Reserve, Nationwide Insurance, TELUS, BMW, and many more. With over 2 million data points on leadership effectiveness, Lisa is the authority on coaching, leadership, and training programs that get results. She has spoken with more than 20,000 practitioners worldwide and over 200 events worldwide, from China to India, the Middle East, Europe, and North America. Ladies and gentlemen, we are so lucky to have Lisa Ann Edwards with us today.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for that wonderful welcome. And have to let you know, today is my birthday, and I am thrilled to be here with all of you. I can't think of something that I'd love to do more than this on my birthday. So we're going to have fun today. ROI can be fun. I'm going to share with you today how it is fun. And specifically, I'm going to be sharing the 3 ways that you can make it easy for clients to invest with you just by pinpointing your ROI. I'm going to share my screen. I've got some slides for you. And let me get that in presentation mode. You should be able to see all of that now. And I am looking forward to our conversation. I'm opening back up the chat window because I love it when you comment and ask questions and give a high five or share your differing opinion all throughout the session. So I've got the chat box open so I can see your comments. I welcome you to jump in at any point in time. I will look over there and take questions all throughout today. And of course, I've got some places baked into our session today where I'll be asking you some questions. So in our session today, I am going to be sharing with you the 3 ways you can make it easy for clients to invest with you just by pinpointing your ROI. I'm going to start off with a little bit of context and overview for why I believe this topic is so important. I'm also going to share a little bit about our method for showing ROI, because that's a key piece. Before you can leverage your ROI, you have to be able to show your ROI. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our foundation around that. Then I'm going to go into the 3 ways. I'm going to give you a chance to reflect on those 3 ways, consider how you might use them. And then I'm going to wrap up the session by talking about the money talk. The money talk is a conversation framework that I developed. It's how you convert client changes into real financial ROI. So that's what we're headed into. We have a lot to share. My hope is you're going to walk away with something tangible and practical that you can put to use immediately. So before we go any further, though, I want to know more about you and who is here. So in the chat box, please share with me, what was your motivation for becoming a coach, leadership expert, or consultant? By the way, I want to add one more piece to this. Also add in the chat box what your unique specialty or niche is, because I'm curious what you're most focused on. So 2 things, actually: your focus area or your niche, and then what was your motivation for becoming a coach and leadership expert or consultant? Thanks for all the birthday wishes there too, everyone. Okay, Vimari is saying, focus is career coaching and mental fitness. Boy, is that not relevant for today's time. Eric says, I had been running a business that was a nightmare. So after I sold it, I became a coach to help others with their businesses. And now I'm a revenue and profitability coach. Also a very relevant and timely topic. Lily says, passion to help others grow and succeed. Boy, isn't that true about this profession? It is so rewarding watching other people grow and knowing that you played a role in that. Focus is professional development. Dancing with Scott says, I've been a movement coach for 43 years. My passion as a teacher is to bring consciousness movement within and with others. I am a dancer, Scott. I'm a partner dancer. I used to dance swing and Lindy Hop. Ram says motivation, organization, and leadership transformation. The niche is mindset change-based coaching. Bamari says loved mentoring and leading teams in corporate. Wanted to go into business for myself and serve. Jane says motivation, my own experience being coached as a woman leader in tech, and focus is promoting the growth of women leaders in technology. Another big opportunity, very relevant. Tanya says, women in transition looking to make their next move from a place of calm and purpose, motivation, supporting others, and creating mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. Dorothy says, working with the community for 10 years. I love working with people and facilitating workshops. I wanted to become a certified career coach and love it ever since. Joyce says, decided to transition from being a psychologist to working with greater growth and possibility with clients. I've seen a number of psychologists enter the coaching field in the last few years. The niche is helping people in positions of influence have more powerful relationships, influence, and success. Another big relevant topic today. I think that's why people get disengaged, is they feel like they can't be influential or they can't play a role in some of the decision making. So very important and relevant. Stacy says, executive coach, having worked with poorly equipped leaders in the past, want to work with people who want to work on their skills because they want to, not because they were ordered to. And Joanne says, authenticity for leadership, success, and happiness. And Laura says, I was told I was a natural coach before I really knew about it 20 plus years ago, and then pursued it at Fielding Graduate University. Interesting. I went to the Hudson Institute for coach training, practically next door neighbors with Fielding. And we work with boards and management teams of public and private companies. So thank you for sharing that. I love seeing your focus area. I've been doing this work for 11 years now. And when I first started, people didn't have a focus or a niche. And as you know, it's so important to have that because that allows you to truly differentiate yourself in the marketplace. So you might be working with a narrow group of people, but when you have that niche, you can really capitalize on that focus and become the obvious go-to expert. And one of the things I also loved in seeing all of your comments is that part of the reason your motivation was to help others essentially go from point A to point B. And that is, as you know, the root word or the original word of coach was a stagecoach, about helping people go from point A to point B. And the demand for this work is greater than it has ever been. In fact, the demand is so great that many people have decided to start online technology platforms that allow them to scale and build to address and capitalize on this big market opportunity. And maybe even that feels threatening potentially to some of you who are here. So we've seen this big explosion of online technology platforms designed to capitalize on this big demand to get help to go from point A to point B. The demand and the opportunity is so great that I decided to look at, I wonder how much money these organizations have been able to raise for their organizations to capitalize on the market. So I looked at just 10 of these logos that you see here to see how much money have they raised. And what I discovered is just 10 of them have raised $2.5 billion. That's a lot of money. And you can count on the fact that all of those people who invested their money into those businesses are expecting to see an ROI on their investment as well. So it'll be very aggressive movement in the marketplace. But here's the thing, and this is where I really believe the opportunity is for you, is that while this line of business is exploding in the marketplace, many of these solutions are truly best designed for people who want to go short distances. So people who essentially want to tap into some kind of resource, read some information, maybe get 1 or 2 coaching sessions to go a very short distance and get themselves there. Almost as if they were going from, let's say, Seattle, where I live, to Spokane. So what's an example of that? And an example of that is, let's imagine somebody wants to know how to prepare for a job interview. That's a short distance. Somebody might be able to tap into one of those resources that we just looked at a moment ago, get some information, maybe get 1 or 2 spot coaching sessions, and be effective in achieving that goal. But where those all of those logos are less effective, and where the big opportunity is for you, is to go help people go a longer distance. So imagine a leader who wants to innovate a new product line and generate revenue from that product line, or raise money to develop in that product line. That's a very long distance. That's like going from Seattle, where I live, to Singapore. And to go a long distance, we need something that looks more like this. We need a jet. And this is where I believe you have the opportunity to truly capitalize in the marketplace, because this demand cannot be met by all those online platforms that we just looked at. So let's use this jet as a metaphor to outline where the opportunities are for you to grow your business. And so using a seat map as a metaphor, if you think about a seat map of an airplane, when you're buying your ticket, you actually have 3 levels of service that you can purchase. So you also can offer 3 levels of service. The first is that economy class. That's where you're offering what's sometimes called the gateway offer. It's the way for people to get to know about you, what it is that you do, learn a little bit, and discover if they want to upgrade. But so examples of what you would offer at this level are things like a 1-day workshop or a half-day workshop, or maybe you have some online content that you would make available to people who are interested in learning from you. So you can offer that at a lower rate. If you built your whole business around that level of service offering, you would be competing with all of those logos that I just shared with you. So it's a great gateway offer, but building your whole business around that means that you're going to compete with some others who have raised a whole lot of money to build their business in that area. But you can upgrade, you can move people up to the next level of service, which is that business class. And at the business class level, you can offer things like year-long masterminds or group and team coaching programs. Now your service level offering is at a higher rate. You're working with a small group of people, but you're providing a deeper level of service to help them go from point A to point B. All those online logos that we just looked at are less likely to compete with you at that level. And you also have one other level of service offering. You know where I'm going next, and that is in the first class seats. That is the high touch service excellence offering that you can make available. At this level, all those online platforms that I just shared with you have a very difficult time competing with you at that level. I feel like this is the big opportunity for you, is to think about your business model in this context, but really recognize the places where you have a competitive advantage over all of those other applications that I just shared with you. So in thinking about that higher service level offering, I wanted to better understand, what is the size of that opportunity? How much can you actually make at that level of service? So you heard Jimmy mention at the very start that we have an automated system. It's called My Excelia. It allows coaches and consultants and experts to track and measure their client impact, including financials. So one of the data pieces that we collect is the fees that coaches are charging. That's how we're able to calculate the ROI. So I decided to look at our data set and understand how much our coaches charging for one-on-one engagements that are anywhere from 6 to 12 months long. And what I found is that the average fee that they were charging across all those engagements was $11,119. That's in alignment with some of the other research that I've seen in the marketplace. Coach Source did a study in 2020, and they found that the average fee for their services was $15,000. That's what clients were investing. So $11,000 is close to that amount. It's right in a line with that amount. But not only did I look at the average, but I also looked at the range. So what's the lowest amount that somebody is charging and what is the highest amount? And this is what I found. The lowest amount that people are charging is all the way down from $800 all the way up to $45,000. So we have people using our automated system who are charging as much as $45,000 for a one-on-one coaching engagement. Now I want to ask you the question, how many of you would like to charge $45,000 for a one-on-one coaching engagement that lasts anywhere from 6 to 12 months? Who has a yes on that? I actually did a session last week and somebody said, no, I don't want to. But David says, yes. Joyce says, yes. I'm envisioning that many of you would like to. And why? Not so much because you want to get all the money you can get, but if that's the size of the opportunity, why aren't you going for that amount? If that's what people are charging, why not align your fees to what others are paying? So that's the very question that I asked myself. Was when I looked at this range, I thought, if the opportunity that we're seeing is 45,000, and by the way, we actually have people using our system who are charging $100,000 for one-on-one coaching engagements for the C-suite level that are year-long contracts. I didn't add that into the data set. That's a really unique category of coaching. But keeping it into this context, I thought, why aren't more people charging that higher rate? And I think there's a few reasons. One is they don't know that that's the opportunity that's available. They don't know other people are doing that. So just knowing that people are charging at that rate gives you some insight to know that you could increase your fees. But there's a couple other reasons why I think people aren't charging at that level. And the first is they don't know how. They don't know how to make a business case. They don't know how to justify their fees for that amount. Everything I'm going to share with you today is going to illustrate how you can increase your fees. But the other reason, the other barrier why people aren't charging that higher rate is it's a mindset belief. And I think that people, that we all have something in our lives or a part of our history, maybe it has to do with our growing up experience, where we have some beliefs about money that hold us back. For me, I have the belief that wanting a lot of money is greedy, and maybe you have that same one. So whatever belief that you have around money that's holding you back from charging higher rates, what I ask you to do for today is to set that mindset belief aside. And for today, I want you to think of money as fuel. And if you think about it, money truly is fuel. It's an energy that allows us to fuel our life, our business, and our legacy. So just for today, at least, I want you to think of money as fuel. Let me give you a case study and tell you about somebody who was able to leverage ROI data to not only increase his fees, but also expand the number of engagements and his work. And this comes from David Maples. David is a former vice president of a staffing firm. He launched his mindfulness leadership coaching in 2020. He had been studying mindfulness and he loved it, and he wanted to be able to share his own experiences with others. So he launched his business in 2020, like a lot of people did. And the challenge that David was facing is he had landed one coaching engagement, but he had only landed one coaching engagement. So he wanted to be able to leverage that one coaching engagement with some client results that he could repurpose and make it easier for other decision makers to invest with him. So he came to us in 2021, I believe. And one of the first things he did is he incorporated the money talk conversation into that one coaching client engagement. He also leveraged our system to create an ROI report. And then he took that data that he had gained that was in that report, and he repurposed it into an ROI case study. He was able then to take that ROI case study, go to his client's boss. So his client was paying him out of his own pocket, but his client, after seeing the results, said, this, what you're doing with me, you could probably do with everybody in my company where I work. So he made it possible for David to meet with his manager, talk about this impact that he had gained with his client, and his client's manager then invited David to do an internal success sharing workshop where David could talk more about mindfulness coaching and also gain exposure to others whom he could coach. So David's results were he saw 209% ROI for his work that he provided for his client. He also was able to justify increasing his fees by 400% within 7 months. even with the same decision maker, with that same client who renewed their contract with David. And then he also opened up the doors to a 40-person workshop within that organization so he could expand his business inside that organization. So big results. And I wanted to share this one with you because I wanted to show you how quickly you can make a case for increasing your fees or expanding your work just by capturing your client results. So for today, I already shared with you, we're going to talk about the 3 ways to make it easy for clients to invest with you. They are about showing your value. And first, you need to know your value. I will be talking about that today. It's also about building your authority backed by evidence. I'll talk about 3 strategies you can use to do that, and growing your impact from one-on-one engagements to many. I'll also share some strategies with you about how you can do that as well. I also am going to be talking about the money talk towards the end, because that's how we convert changes that clients experience with us into real financial ROI. There is a worksheet that you can download. It's called the money talk. I'm going to put the, let me put the URL in chat so you can easily click on it if you'd like to download it. I will walk through the framework as we talk today, but there's more information in the worksheet, and it allows you to actually work in the worksheet if that's something you want to do. All right. Before we go any further, briefly, Jimmy's already told you a little bit about me. I learned firsthand the importance of having ROI metrics when I was head of talent management for Bill Gates' own global media company. 3 months after I joined that company, they made the decision to cut all the coaching programs and leadership programs because they couldn't see the value of those programs. Thought I was going to lose my job. I couldn't sleep at night. What I was able to do is I ran a coaching program inside that organization where I was the coach. I was going through coaching certification at the time. It was a 9-month-long program, and I designed that program to fix a problem that business was facing. And at the end of that program, I was able to share the results with the CFO and show her how coaching could actually contribute to the business. And I had the real financial metrics to show it. That allowed me to secure a sizable budget to bring leadership programs, management programs, coaching programs, and all kinds of other investments to develop people. I always say that having the ROI data and those metrics allowed me to keep that job for 6 years while it went through a lot of turmoil and upheaval. Bill Gates eventually sold the business, but having the data and metrics allowed me to sustain the work that I was doing with the people in that organization. Been in my own business for 11 years now. I've worked on ROI projects with some of the most recognizable brands that you see there as well. But if there's only one thing that you remember about me, I hope that it's this, and that is that I never have to sell myself. When I first started my business, I still did leadership and coaching programs. I hated the sales process because I always felt like the spotlight was on me or my chemistry, or was I funny, or was I engaging? But when I could start to sell with client results, I loved selling because I was no longer selling myself. I was selling the results that my clients got. It was so much easier, and it was so much easier to sell. So I hope that some of the ideas that I share with you today are going to help you feel that you no longer have to sell yourself as well. This need for data has been around for a long time. It's not something new. All the way back in 2009, ICF conducted a survey with decision makers, people who hire coaches, and they asked them, what is this decision-making criteria you use to hire a coach? All these items over here on the left are what they had to choose from. And in 2009, they said that the number one selection criteria was coach's confidence, personal rapport, personal compatibility. I think of that as coach chemistry. I still think that's the number one criteria. I still think there has to be a chemistry. But all the way back in 2009, they were also asking to know about the effectiveness of the coaching process. And the only way you can describe the effectiveness of a coaching process is through data and metrics. And back in 2009, we didn't have very effective ways to do that. What I'm going to share with you today, I think will help you with some of that as well. So our customers, our clients, our decision makers, people who decide to invest in us have been asking for this for a very long time. I know that there's probably something that you're doing today that allows you to demonstrate the effectiveness of your coaching process. It might be one of these things, or it might be something else, but what I'd love for you to do now is to share with me, what are you doing to demonstrate the effectiveness of your coaching work or your leadership development program. So go ahead and type in chat. Let me know what you're doing. You can use one of the numbers or type the word. All right. Stacy says testimonials and stories. Vamari says testimonials, stories, and coaching goals achieved. Excellent. Sherry says coaching goals achieved. Ebony says 2, 3, 5, and 6. Wow. That's a lot, Ebony. That's fantastic. Shakti says 3 and 5. All right. I love this. Believe it or not, when I started doing this work a number of years ago, people weren't doing anything. Maybe they were just capturing testimonials. The money talk actually comes from a story, and you'll learn more about that when we go through the money talk towards the end of the session today. So I just have 2 slides here to talk about the measures that we use and the framework that it's built around. So the framework or the foundation for the process and the way that I think about data collection, this is actually our technology is designed around this process. It comes from this model called Excel. It's our model that I developed. And it starts off with the very first step, which is to engage with the value of coaching. I think this is the hardest step of the entire process. This is where you're describing not only the value of coaching, but the value based in metrics and measures. And when you're talking about engaging clients in this piece, specifically around collecting the data and the measures and the metrics, I can find can be challenging because your desire for the measures and the metrics might be so that you can repurpose them for business development purposes. So we always have to stand in the shoes of our client and our decision makers. The decision maker, the sponsor, the person who has the budget loves to have the data in the end so they can make a case for retaining or expanding their budget. And your client, your coachee likes the metrics because that can empower them to advocate for their career, their performance review, or their pay increase. So when we think about the data and the metrics at the very start, and we're engaging our client in the process of measurement, we have to think about the benefits to our different groups because it's different than what it is for you. Hardest step there. The rest of the steps are fairly more straightforward. The second is around exacting the measures for setup. That's about aligning the measures to coaching plan. The third step is around centering around midpoint progress. To go back to the metaphor that we used at the start, that coaching or leadership development or even consulting, the whole intent of those services that you offer are to help people to go from point A to point B. So if we use the metaphor of car or plane, at some point, people want to know the progress. Are they halfway to the end goal that they have? So without any measures at the midpoint, you can't share back with the client how they're making progress. So that's a very important piece. The fourth step is around empowering with ROI of impact. That's where you have all the progress and growth. So we measure behavior change. And we also then track the financial impact data through the money talk. So we want to be able to know what was the contribution of those changes to the organization. When your client has that data, now they are empowered with something that they can use to advocate on their behalf for their career advancement, their promotion, their pay increase, or their performance review. Finally, the last step is to ask for permission to repurpose the data, make it anonymous, and leverage that data to lift your expertise. And that's what we're going to spend the whole rest of the time today around. It's my very favorite step of the whole process. Once you have that data, I love to be able to showcase and broadcast your overall success. We just to give you a glimpse of what those ROI reports, this is an example of what an ROI report from our system looks like. It's some of the pages, but overall what you can see is there's a client profile, there's the top 5 ways that they've grown, there's a deeper dive on some of the specific behavior changes that they were working on and how their observers saw their progress and growth. And then of course, the last page is around the financial impact. I want to touch upon the ROI. So you're all familiar with ROI. If you think about your retirement account, your IRA, or maybe you have a 401k that hasn't rolled over to an IRA yet, or maybe you invest in real estate or you have some other type of investment. So we're all really very familiar with what ROI is. The math on this is actually the easiest part of the whole thing. The way the math works is that you take the amount of gains that you had, the financial gains that you had, minus the original investment that you had divided by the investment. And in this case, the ROI is 10%. If you got 10% return in your retirement account in 1 year, in today's world, you'd be really happy with that. But they always prepare us and say, expect 7% return year over year in your retirement accounts. 10% would be really good. When it comes to coaching or consulting or leadership training programs, I find that decision makers want a much higher ROI percent. And I believe it's because they can go online, they can do a Google search for coaching ROI or leadership ROI. They can find a handful of studies, very few number of studies out there in the public domain, and they'll say 500% ROI or 7x the return. While it's true that you can get that high of an ROI, I actually like when it's lower. We see things like 62% ROI or 116% ROI. I find when your ROI is lower, it's much more credible with your decision makers. So I like when it's lower than when it's a really high number. And of course, you want to represent those results back to your client into some kind of report. Here's an example that comes from ours. You can see the ROI numbers all the way down at the bottom, but there's a description of what those impacts are at the top of this table. So that gives you a foundation for what we're going through. I'm going to go through the 3 ways next. How can you take that data, repurpose it, leverage it to make it easier for clients to invest with you or reinvest with you or expand their investment with you? Before I go on, I want to ask, is this making sense so far?
Yes, very much so. This is great.
All right, good. I see some yeses. Okay, yes, yes, yes. Let's keep going. Let's get into it. Okay, the very first way that you can make it easy for clients to invest with you is by showing your value during the sales conversation that you're having, during the sales period. There's 3 tactical strategies that you can use to show your value. The first is through your ROI power statement. The second is through an ROI case summary. And the third is through an ROI case study 1-pager. I'm going to walk through all 3 of them. The first is the ROI power statement. This is your value proposition. So anybody who's worked in corporate before, or let's say you worked in sales, you've ever taken a sales training course, you know, sales training is all about the value proposition. If you were ever a salesperson inside an organization, it's all about the value proposition. Surprisingly, in coaching, consulting, and providing leadership training programs, it hasn't been required of us to show the value proposition. What's the return on investment? If you're going to invest in this solution, what will you get in return in financial terms? That's what the value proposition is, always in financial terms. But when you can do that, you differentiate yourself in the marketplace. This is my value proposition that I used to use when I was selling leadership programs. I'm going to read it to you and then break down what the framework is, which you might already notice. So my value proposition was, we work with ambitious leaders who want to become more effective leaders. For example, an organization had a new leader who had to step in to lead as an intentional role model and inspire a defeated team with a compelling mission and vision. By the end of our work together, leader improved team utilization rates, which resulted in improved profitability and a 371% financial ROI for the company. You can use the value proposition in a number of ways. So if you're networking at a business event or at a conference where your potential decision makers or prospective clients are, you can use this in a more conversational way. You wouldn't say it all in a block like I just did, but you can have it as a dialogue. And essentially what you want to communicate with them is the type of people you work with, an example of the kind of organization you work with, and the results you were able to achieve. You can also use it when you're doing cold or warm outreach. I use my value proposition when I'm making a phone call. I might never get that person on the phone, but I might decide that I'm going to leave a voicemail message and then I'll send a follow-up email. And in my follow-up email, I'll also have a really quick sentence that ties back to my value proposition. You can also use the value proposition when you're setting the stage for, let's say, a discovery conversation. You're having that initial meeting with your client. You're setting the context. You're taking control of that meeting by setting the context and describing, again, the type of people that you work with, the type of organizations that you work with, and the results that you can get before you head into the discussion questions. So that's the value proposition. There's actually another worksheet, and I'm going to type it in here, ROI power statement, because not only can you create this one statement, but you can take one client's results and repurpose that one client's results into 5 different power statements. And why would you do that? Because you have different types of customers who resonate with different points of view. So it's not changing the results that you got, but it's about looking at the results that you got through different lenses so that you can repurpose the same client results in a variety of client situations so that it will resonate with different decision makers. So that's what that worksheet will do for you if you want to download it. I want to give you an example of the case summary, and there are 3 different ways that you can share a case summary. You might use the case summary when you're at the phase of the sales conversation where you're starting to like co-create the proposal, or maybe you have something visual that you're sharing with your client and you're building value. One of the ways to build value is to have proof that your work gets results. I like this style of a case summary because it's a billboard style. It shows that you're not a one-hit wonder, that you have a consistent, reliable process that gets results for clients. This is one of my case summaries. Another case summary that you've seen already was that what I walked through with David Maples. That's a kind of case study where you can actually walk through the story of the results that the client has gotten by working with you. I like the billboard style when I'm selling a large project and I'm working on that, building value for that. I like the billboard style for a large engagement. So there's an example of that. The last one is the case study one pager. And the one pager is something that you use as a leave behind. And the value that it has for you is that it equips the person that you've spoken with to advocate on your behalf. There's a couple of different styles. This is one style of a one pager. You would use this style when you're talking with the CFO or the COO, somebody who's very analytical, who likes to see charts, graphs, and numbers. This one has a chart. There's another style that you could use that's more story-like. It still has a number on it, but it's not focused on the charts and the graph. It has a little more story. So if you're working with people who are more relational oriented, you would use that style. But the main advantage of these one pagers is that after you have the meeting, you can follow up to summarize what the next steps are, send your one pagers so that the person you worked with can advocate on your behalf, influence others in the organization. They have something tangible they can use to do that. Laura, you're asking about the calculation. We're going to go through the money talk towards the end of the session. That's where we'll address your question there. So let me give you a case study. This one comes from Julie Kowalski, and Julie has had a successful consulting and coaching business for 30 years. She came to one of our programs at the end of 2019, and then she disappeared in early 2020. I didn't see her for a very long time. I tried emailing her. I tried contacting her to find out what had happened. Didn't hear any reply. And then in 2021, so the end of 2021, she contacted me through Facebook on Facebook Messenger, where I never am at, but I found her message, and she told me that she had had COVID. She had gotten it very early in the very beginning of the pandemic. So she had long COVID, and she was considering retiring because she had been so thrown off her feet by COVID. But what she shared with me is that she had been working with just one client throughout that whole period when she had COVID, and she wanted to discover if her client had gotten any results at all. So we brought her back into one of our programs. She incorporated the money talk into that client conversation. She also used our system to create one of those ROI reports. And what she found is that that client had not only identified progress and growth in their own behavior, but their own view of their progress and growth was matched by all of the observers. She was surprised to see that. That was one of her big findings from that, see that the observers agreed in the progress and growth. She also was able to see 100% ROI for her clients. So her clients saw 100% ROI by working with Julie. Julie was shocked by this. That's probably not even strong enough. If you talk with her personally about it, she was just blown away by the impact that her client had gotten, because she thought nothing had occurred because she was so thrown off her feet. What this did for Julie is it got her back on her game. You might remember me saying she was thinking about just retiring and closing up her business because she didn't think she was effective anymore. And because of this, she decided to pivot her business, work with clients in a different way, scale back and ease back a little bit in her business, but be able to go forward with a pivot in her business because she had confidence in knowing the value that she was bringing to clients. So that's an example about how important it is to know your value before you can show your value. And I would just want to pause here before we go into the second way, which is, how could you see yourself using any of the ideas that we just walked through? How could you see yourself using any of the ideas? And you can type in chat. Eric says impact statements for sure. I think it takes the value of the ROI power statements is it's so crystal clear, and it makes it easy for prospective decision makers to decide, are you a potential right fit for them? Are you going to be able to help them with something that they're facing? So it brings a lot of clarity. It's the number one reason why people choose to work with us is they can't clearly define client results. And when you can speak in a power statement, you're better able to describe client results. Tanya says, sharing stories and impact statements with potential clients when having exploratory calls. All right, very good. So I'm going to keep going. And this one is around building your authority. So what I just spoke about was how you can use ROI data when you're when you're getting appointments or you're having appointments, how you can use the ROI data there. This is about using ROI data to build your authority. And I'm going to talk about 3 ways that you can use to build your authority. One of the most common things that people think about when they're building their authority is about speaking at events to gain visibility and talk about their work. And one of the ways to really expand your authority and build your authority is to write and publish a New York Times best-selling book. So if you think about all the big names, Marshall Goldsmith, Brene Brown, Dan Pink, James Clear, what all of them have done is they've written a book that becomes a New York Times bestseller. And now when they speak at events, they're the obvious authority on the topic that they speak about. And so many times coaches and consultants and leadership experts want to be able to leverage the same tactics to do the same thing. You become the obvious expert when you do that. So that's great if you have about 18 months to 2 years to really buckle down, write a book that becomes a New York Times bestseller, but there's a shortcut to building your authority, and I'm going to share the shortcut with you. The first is to create a business case, which is really more like a business pitch. It's probably not what you think the business case is. I'm going to walk through what that is. The second is the executive progress report. I'll share with you what that is. And then finally is to bake in ROI. So the business case, it really is a business pitch. Any of you who work with startups or you're familiar with the whole startup landscape, you know that in order to raise funds, in other words, in order to get people to invest in your company, which is no different than getting people to invest in hiring you, they have to create a pitch deck. And that pitch deck has to be so compelling that people are willing to give, in some cases, a couple $1 million, $10 million, whatever it might be, to invest in that company if it's a venture capital firm. So I love the pitch deck for coaches, consultants, and leadership experts. You may never share it with anyone, but the purpose of the pitch deck is to force you to think clearly and in depth about the problem that you solve, how your solution is different than any other solution in the marketplace, and how your solution gets results. What's the ROI for the client? When you take the time to create your own pitch deck, it empowers you to speak more confidently and more clearly when you are speaking, whether in a sales conversation or you're speaking from the stage, because you know the problem so much better than anyone else because you've invested time to develop your own pitch deck. Your pitch deck will clarify for you why you're the best person to solve this particular problem, why now is the time to invest with you, and what the payoff is for the client. Pitch decks follow the same formula. There's a short summary at the start that summarizes what it is that you do. Then it talks about the problem that's evidence-based, your solution and how it compares to other solutions in the marketplace, some type of demo or model or framework that you use to base your work around, up to three case studies or use cases in the standard startup pitch deck. They're called use cases. We're calling them case studies today. It's the same thing. And then the financial impact or the opportunity, the payoff for the client, and then how to get started. So like I said at the start, you may never share this with anyone, but the work, the effort that you will go through to create this will empower you to better speak with greater confidence and authority. The second thing that you can do is to build in an executive progress report. If you're running a coaching program or leadership program or a group coaching program, most likely the client hired you to solve or fix some kind of problem or reach some type of aspirational goal. You could wait until the very end to see how it all paid off for the client, but it's a much better practice to have some kind of progress report or centering around midpoint progress at the midpoint. You can also use that progress report to start to seed and build your influence inside that organization. You can invite other potential stakeholders to your progress sharing meeting, other people who might have the opportunity or might have the interest to bring you into their parts of the organization. In your progress report, you're going to share what was the problem at the start, the part of the solution that you've implemented so far, the results so far, one slide, results so far, not too much detail, just the highlights, and then what we need from you in order to meet our end goal at the end. This will help you not only share some degree of accountability back for the client, but it will also help you start to seed your relationships and build your authority inside that organization. The last thing you can do is to bake in your ROI metrics. Our clients do not know what to measure. They don't know what can be measured. They don't know how to measure. Many measurement solutions are very complicated and time consuming. So people have been burned by complicated measurement processes. So you can build your authority by bringing your expertise to the conversation and making recommendations about what will be measured and how you will share that data back to the client. Let me give you an example of how somebody baked in ROI to actually secure a project that was stalled. And this comes from Deborah Dubree. Deborah had been coaching professional athletes one-on-one for a number of years. She liked doing that work. I imagine it's got to be challenging to coach athletes, but because I just envision that they miss a lot of their appointments, but I could be wrong. I don't know what it was in Deborah's situation. I'm making up a story there. But anyway, she was coaching NFL football players, and she wanted to transition her business into providing more large-scale programs inside organizations. So she was in conversation with the CEO for a 20-person women's leadership development program. The CEO was all for it, but the decision-making was stalled, and Deborah wanted to close the sale. So what Deborah decided to do is to bake in ROI. She went back to the CEO. She incorporated the money talk into her conversation. And then she included a sample of the client ROI report. And then she told the CEO that she was baked in these client ROI reports into her proposal as a value add. So she wasn't even going to charge the client an additional fee to have these ROI metrics. What Deborah tells me is that the CEO's eyes lit up, her face lit up, because what Deborah didn't know is the CEO still had to sell the program and get the board to approve in the investment. Deborah didn't even know that. And so that was, though, the game changer for Deborah. The CEO was able to go to the board, get the approval, that closed the sale. And after it closed the sale, the CEO called Deborah back and said, guess what? We're going to increase it to 42 participants. So big game changer for Deborah just by baking in the ROI metrics. So now I want to ask you, how do these ideas resonate with you? We've talked about 3 things that you can do to build your authority. Create your business pitch, might not share it with anybody. Executive progress report, also use that progress report to build your influence inside the organization. And the third one is around baking in ROI. How do these resonate with you? Vimari says, I created a pitch deck and it's been a huge tool. That's great to hear. I just feel like it's a game changer in your confidence level and your ability to speak with authority. So I'd love to see it. Laura says, love it. Tanya says, love these.
Yeah, I agree with all of this. I mean, it's the last point that you just made. I mean, yes, obviously having the pitch deck build your own confidence, and whether you use it or not, I like that, you kind of go into that. To me, this last bit that you talked about here is so important, because so often we as coaches, we don't talk to necessarily the decision maker. And so having this, whether it's the pitch deck or whether it is the one page, or having the ROI stuff in there, makes it so easy for the person you're talking to just go, here, boss, check this out. And then like it does sell itself, because they go, oh, well, obviously we want to make money on this, and here's our return. Exactly. It just makes it so easy for the person you're talking to share it with the decision maker. So it really opens up more opportunities for you, because there's so many more people you can speak with now.
Exactly. All right. I'm seeing all kinds of content. So if you're feeling at all overwhelmed, the place to start is the money talk. That's the best place to start, is to get comfortable. And I am going to go through the money talk. I'll share some examples. That's the place to start to help your clients start to convert their changes into financial value. So start with the money talk, then create your power statement, then create your case summaries, then create everything that I'm talking about almost goes in order. Then the last thing is, then you can start to build on that. But the first place to start is the money talk, then your power statement, and that will get the momentum going for you. Let's go to the third one. This is about growing your impact from one-on-one engagements to many. And when I first started my business and I was still coaching and consulting, I live in the Seattle area. And at that time, people still expected the coaches to drive to do coaching. And I can remember a company wanted to hire me to do coaching. And they told me it's $350 an hour. Well, it takes 90 minutes to get there, 90 minutes to get home. And by the time I did the math on them, like, this business model is not going to work for me. So I really wanted to sell programs, because I could sell programs for 6 figures. So my hunch is that many of you would like to be able to expand and grow your impact as well. So the 3 things that you can use are, it's like an internal success sharing. I'm going to share what that's about and how you can leverage that with ROI. The second is an insights paper. And the last is either executive roundtable or executive forum or some type of peer-to-peer conversation. So I'm going to talk through all 3 of these. The first is some type of internal success sharing. So after you've completed your client project, and ideally you've used that progress report process as well, now you are perfectly set up to ask your sponsor to host an event where you can give a taste test. So they're learning about one of the topics that's most relevant, because since you've been in the organization, you know what their pain points are. So you're going to talk about the most relevant piece that they're going to resonate with. You give them some tactical, practical things that they can use and take away from that. And you are going to bake in to your 60-minute workshop, you're going to bake in some case studies. And this session is not with participants, it's with decision makers, people who can decide whether to bring you into other parts of the organization. You can ask your sponsor to host the event. You can set it up over breakfast or lunch so people are more likely to come. You can ask your client to introduce the session, maybe even talk about their own experience, include those practical takeaways, and you're going to build value and credibility by having your ROI case studies baked in there, and then offer an easy way for people to take a next step with you. So that's one thing you can use to grow your impact inside the organization. The second is what I call an insights paper. And I think of the insights paper as the crown jewel of ROI. It's the hardest asset to create. And the insights paper is similar to an HBR light type of paper. In that paper, you're going to start by speaking about a relatable problem for your ideal target customer. That relatable problem will be backed in some external research. Maybe you'll cite Fast Company or HBR, or maybe there's a peer-reviewed research study that you're going to cite in that opening problem statement. The problem statement then sets up the case that you're going to talk about, and you'll have just a few data points in that case study. The thing about the insights paper that makes it different from the typical case study is that a typical case study is, this was the problem, this was the solution, these are the results. The insights paper has a level of above that interpretation. So case study is very dry. Problem, solution, results. Insights paper is, what does it mean? What's the meaning that I make of it? You are all experts in the type of work that you do. You've worked with a number of clients in your unique specialty. So you have a unique insight that other people, I wouldn't have, because I don't do what you do. Many people wouldn't have the level of insight that you have. So when you look at the data, the insights paper is about, what does that data mean to you? What does it say to you? And the insights paper is all about that unique meaning that you make about that data set. Here's an example of what an insights paper can look like. They're usually anywhere from 5 to 9 pages. You'll notice that there's a lot of narration. There's only 3 data points represented in this particular one. This one I think is 9 pages or 7 pages long, maybe. So it's a few pages. So it's got 2 bar charts and it's got 1 table with some data in it. So not data heavy, but enough data to build the storyline that you're creating with your insights. You can then leverage the insights paper for peer-to-peer discussions. And if anybody is feeling right now really overwhelmed, this is the thing you're going to leave to the end. This is like the last thing that you would do to create your ROI insights, not the first thing you would do. But what this does is it allows you to truly differentiate yourself in the marketplace. You can invite perspective. You might have a target list of companies that you want to work with, or you might have within your network a group of companies that you want to work with. And you can invite them to some type of bespoke kind of program where they get to interact and meet with each other. Maybe it's they're talking and maybe you're facilitating conversation, and you can design your questions. You can facilitate that conversation, design your questions to follow your insights paper. And the value of doing that is that you're not just asking interesting random questions, but you're asking questions that are designed with an end in mind. No differently than an attorney who's in a courtroom is asking questions of the witness with an end in mind. They know where they want to go with their questions. So that's exactly how you leverage your insights paper for that type of a setup or a structure. So there are 3 ways that you can grow your impact. I want to give you an example of somebody who's done that. This comes from Keisha Winter. Keisha has had a very successful career. She's worked with some really big Fortune 500 organizations. Most recently, she had a HR leadership role at GE. Like many people, she left her job, started a leadership business in 2020. And when she left her job, she had secured a 20-person women's leadership program at one of these Fortune 500 companies. So she knew she was onto something, and she wanted to be able to somehow leverage that project for something else. and expand her work. So she came to us, she incorporated the money talk into her coaching debrief with each of the women in the program. She included the ROI reports with each of the women as well. She found that she had 743% ROI when she totaled up all of the impacts that the women in that program had. That gave her the confidence to increase her program fee by 10. So she added a 0 at the end of her price tag for that program. She also increased her one-on-one coaching fees by 200%. So she doubled her fees. She now has a billboard of ROI case studies. So she's taken all that data, asked for permission to repurpose it, make it anonymous. Some of them are on her website. And that gave her the ability to take that data and make a case to more senior level decision makers inside that organization for a 6-figure project. Pretty amazing success in, frankly, a very short period of time. I love Keisha's testimonial here, because one of the things you'll notice is that the name of her program is Own Your Power. And what the data did for Keisha is it allowed her to own her own power. So I love that for her. So my question is for you. I'm going to go through the money talk next. I'm going to give you some examples. Before I do that, I want to ask you, are you interested now in increasing your fees or the size of your client engagements?
Yes.
Yes, is a trick question. Yes, exactly. Now you're probably more motivated and more energized. And my hope is that your brain is just popping with all kinds of ideas of what you're going to do. So let's talk about the money talk. This is the all important money talk. And by the way, it's okay if you don't have the money talk in the beginning. Eventually, you really do need to have it because it's a differentiator. But some of the ideas that I've shared with you don't even have to have the money talk data. However, I do think it's valuable to have. I'm going to put the URL in here one more time because I'm going to go through the framework, but that worksheet is going to give you more information. You can actually use the worksheet with your client. So there we go. So the money talk is very similar to a coaching contracting engagement, but it has 2 key differences. And the first is that you are going to unpack the current or the starting state much more deeply than you currently do. You're also going to unpack the future or the desired or the end state much more deeply than you usually do. You're going to ask for examples. So when people say things like, well, I want to become a better communicator, I don't feel like I'm a very good communicator. Can you give me an example of that? You're listening for the examples. So the very first thing is you're going to unpack current and end state much more deeply than you currently do. The second thing that's different from a typical coaching contracting conversation is you're going to monetize the change from the current to the end state. And the reason you can monetize the change from the current to the end state is because you have unpacked deeply what they have changed, how they have changed. You are listening for the change. So that's the narrowing. You are listening for the change. Your client is never going to tell you, I saved $537. They are never going to come to a conversation and tell you that in a coaching debrief. You have to ask questions to help them think of the financial values. That's how you're going to pinpoint the value of that change. Then you're going to check back and make it clear. I'm going to walk through 3 examples. All 3 of these came from the same program. This was a leadership development program that I ran for one of my clients. They had 20 participants. It was a 9-month-long program. We had learning content every single month. There was what I call a cafe. They had some learning content. They also learned coaching skills. And then we paired them up. So they did peer coaching. They also had peer coaching supervision. They also had some one-on-one coaching. They did some learning plans. They had a presentation at the end. So that was the overall design of the program. I met with them at the very start of the program when they were crafting their learning plans. And I had what I call the pre-money talk. So it's basically having the money talk, but you most likely won't land on, sometimes you will, but in other cases, you won't land on the financial impact at the start. Some of them did, which I'll show you. And then you also have I had the money talk conversation at the very end as a debrief. So this first one, this manager was stressed out, overworked, And he was micromanaging his team. He knew he was micromanaging his team. The situation was he worked out of his home. This was before COVID. Everybody that he managed also worked out of their home. So he didn't have a practical, clear line of sight as to what his team was working on, and he also didn't trust them. So he wasn't just micromanaging his team. He was doing their work. He was duplicating their work. So he was doing the same things that the people on his team were doing. He was spending anywhere from 15 to 20 hours a week duplicating the efforts of his team. If we just put a monetary value on that, the company was paying him a little over $86,000 a year to do the same work his team was hired to do. By the end of the program, when I did the debrief with him and I asked him what's changed, what he shared with me is that, first of all, he learned to trust his team more, but he also worked with his team in a different way where they set expectations at the start, and he had a different way of checking in with them all throughout the week. He reduced the amount of time that he was duplicating the efforts of his team. He's still doing his team's work, but only 5 to 10 hours a week, and we could count the overall savings of that change. The second person, her role was that she was an account manager. So this company was a digital media services company. They created digital media marketing content for large Fortune 500 companies. This person's role was to be the account manager. So she was responsible for landing the big accounts and then looking for opportunities to expand business with inside that account. Also oversee the production services team, the people who were creating the content, delivering it to the client, also oversee that process and make sure they were delivering product content to the customer that the customer was happy about. When I asked her at the start what she wanted, what her issues were or what she wanted to gain from the program, she had no burning platform, no agitation, no issue, no frustration, no problem. But she noticed that in the program, there was some content around innovation. She was attracted to that. So she said that she wanted to gain something from that innovation topic. When I went back to her at the end of the program and I asked her what she'd gained from that, she actually, I still remember to this day, she said, "You're never going to believe what happened." And what she shared with me was that she took some of the concepts around innovation. So making it okay for people to step outside of their normal roles and responsibilities, take risk, making it okay to fail. She took those ideas and she brought them to her team, the delivery services team. And what happened was they found 3 new projects that totaled $822,670 additional dollars of revenue. We didn't account all of that amount to the impact of this program, but those employees had never before found additional sources of revenue. When the CEO heard about this story, he said, every account manager needs to do the same thing. This is how we'll find additional revenue. So that's the second one. The third one is highlights the number one secret, and it's the way to get started. And actually, I've already talked about it. And that is the number one secret. The easiest way to find financial impact is through time savings. Everyone you work with, if they're taking any sliver of what they're doing with you and doing something with it, they're most likely saving time somewhere. They've decided to deprioritize something, or they decided they're not going to work on something, or they've delegated to somebody else. It is the easiest place to find financial impact. And I highly encourage you, as you're learning the money talk, as you're practicing the money talk, focus on listening for where the time savings are. And that's where you can find some financial value. Think of time saving as your training wheels. You don't always want to rely on your training wheels, time savings, but it's the way to get started in it and get practiced at it. So I highly encourage you to do that. So this example, she was also stressed out, also had too much work at the start, but her issue, the root cause of that was different than the first person. Her issue was she was head of HR. She was a really nice person. She wanted all the employees to like her. Because she was a really nice person, she also was not holding her team to a very high level. And then she wasn't holding them accountable for their work. So they weren't performing well. She was doing their work for them. She was spending 10 hours a week doing that, not duplicating their work, but doing their work for them. We could put a monetary value on that. By the end of the program, what she shared with me was that she learned some conversational frameworks, ways to give feedback that were easier for her. She didn't feel like she was being mean. She was being more direct, and she could lean into these frameworks to give feedback to people on her team about their performance. She also made some changes on her team. As a result of that, she was able to whittle down the amount of time that she was doing her team's work down to 2 hours a week. We could count the financial gains from that time savings from 10 hours a week down to 2 hours a week. So there are 3 examples. This is the framework again that we've walked through. The key is to ask for examples. When somebody says, I need to learn how to manage up better. Can you give me an example of that? That's where you will find the financial values. When they're talking about, so much better, I get along better with my manager now. Can you give me an example of that? The examples are where we find the financial values. The client will never tell you what the financial amount is. You have to ask questions to get there. Just like in coaching, the client will never tell you what the solution is. You have to ask questions to help them come up with the solution. So it works in the same way. The most overlooked person in the entire money talk, the person for whom there's the greatest value in the financial data, who is most overlooked, is the client. We love having the ROI data because we want to use it for business development, but the most overlooked is the client. When you help your client think through what the gains are for the work that they've done with you, you've now empowered them to have better performance review conversations, to have better career conversations, to have conversations about promotion. And so we often overlook this person, but recognize that they have the value, the greatest value. There is the money talk worksheet. We've talked about this already. Now we are at the end. I know we have some time remaining for any additional questions, but I do want to ask, what will you do? What are you planning to take away and do from our session today?
I'm going to ask different questions. And I really do like, it's funny because it's so obvious. They're coaching questions, give me an example of that. And so that makes so much sense. I actually have a call with a prospect later today, this evening, and this was perfectly timed because I have new questions that I'm going to ask to show. She's a banker, so it'll make sense that she'll want to know exactly where the money can be found. So I'm super excited about it. So thank you, Lisa, and this is great.
Yeah, good. And, practice with yourselves too. I'm imagining you might have a friend in this community, and before you meet with your client, schedule a call and practice, do role plays with each other. Laura, yes, you can ask a question.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. So thank you so, by the way, big fan of you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Seriously, I've really benefited from a lot of listening to you in the past. So in this scenario, I'm just trying to figure out how to get a deeper dive. So when working with the head of creative and the head of marketing, and they're not getting along, and then their teams aren't getting along, and all of a sudden they start playing nice, and the CEO is saying, oh my God, they're learning to play nice. We pulled a case study together around this where we did, coaching ROI on the front end and the back end of it based on behaviors, and got input back from everybody that was involved in that process. So, flexibility, impulse control, delegation, things like that. And we demonstrated it that way. And then we demonstrate it through salaries and the time that's saved for that, senior leader of creative and the senior leader. But how do you go further and deeper into the organization? Do you see what I mean in terms of time saved? And now this team, can take this and run with it, and it's an easy handoff to this team. Or I'm just trying to see if there's a way to take it even deeper.
And what do the two teams do? What's their function?
Well, one is the head of, they're a manufacturing company, a global manufacturing company. So they oversee all the creative, and then the other team oversees all the marketing.
Okay. And they have to work together. It's creative and marketing. So one is creative in the ideas and the other is executing on it.
Yeah. And this is actually a past case study. I'm just trying to figure out like what we could have done differently to even dive more deeply into it, because it's, yes, going to the head of creative and saying, how much time, were you able to save in terms of, making decisions more effectively together and handing off things more effectively and not being the bottleneck in the creative department, right? There's that, but then that team now is functioning even better.
Yeah.
Or maybe we just don't go that deep. I mean, I don't know. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, you can look at that. You can look at behavior change within the team. And so there's the time savings, but I'm also thinking the results, whatever they're delivering, whatever those outcomes are. So are they generating, were they able to come up with a more creative idea that was more impactful for marketing because of this? So I would look at those. So just like I said earlier, where think of time savings as the training wheel, and it is a great place to start. And eventually look at other places. Innovation. Did they come up with an innovative marketing concept that was a huge success for them, that generated new revenue or got them into a different industry as a result of the two teams collaborating and working together more effectively? Is that something that bubbled up? So I would look for those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's a great idea. In this instance, I think that it would be hard to say that the sales, like the marketing, was because of coaching, because they're also a healthcare supply company, and we were working with them. These leaders was through COVID, and I mean that their sales were skyrocketing. Do you see what I'm saying? So I don't think that would have been an accurate assessment to be fair about it, about it.
And so then you can ask the question, because that's always the case. Always, because now we're also in a decline. So there might be that you're working with a client and they're gaining something from it, and their sense is that it's having an impact on revenue or profitability, but the trend has been down. So it's not an upward trend. But what would have happened if you hadn't had this program? What would you anticipate that the numbers would have been without this program? Is there something, so there may be both not upward trends, but with the intervention or the program or the coaching, it's less of a downward trend.
Yeah.
And then you can ask the question around, so you had all these other dynamics and other factors. To what degree do you believe that this improved collaboration and teamwork impacted that revenue amount?
Thank you.
That's good. Super fantastic. All right, good. I see lots of comments in here.
Yeah, great comments, because it was a fantastic webinar. Please, everybody, as we close up now, go ahead and click the link. You don't have to take the survey right now, but go ahead and click the link so it shows up in your browser, so you can do it afterwards. And definitely use the 2 links for the money talk and the, oh my gosh, I forgot what the name of it is, but the ROI power statement. And get those things. Definitely get on Lisa Ann's newsletter, so that you get on her list, and that way you can get all that. She does have webinars and classes that she teaches. And I don't know, Lisa Ann, would you be interested in coming back to do like a full-on workshop where we maybe bring a little bit more information, maybe some hands-on kind of stuff? That would be awesome. So we'll talk about that later.
Happy birthday. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. It was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Keep me posted of all your success. Bye-bye,
Oh
everyone.
my God.
Bye,
Great.
Roseanne. Happy
Bye-bye.
birthday.
Bye.
Thanks,
See you later,
everybody.
Joanne.